My name is Peter Perkins. I live in Massachusetts in the United States, and I met Adam through YouTube, which is kind of funny because I've never really been one to interact via comments. You know, sometimes I'll read the comments, but not so much writing or going back and forth. So this was a kind of a long shot. I just reached out to Adam. I had a question on one of his PHP videos, I think regarding Ajax requests or something. And I said, hey, buddy, like, it'd be really great if I could get some one-on-one, description. That would mean a lot to me, because I would watch the videos over and over again and it wasn't making sense, wasn't clicking. So, yeah, Adam responded, and we have done some projects together and some coding. And, yeah, I guess we just kind of stayed in touch. And every once in a while, we'll jump on a call, and 5 minutes call turns into 2 hours, and we're just, shooting the shit. And, yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
that's,
yeah, our relationship started programming wise, but we delved into other things as we spoke, and we kind of appreciate each other's thinking on all kind of different matters. So what we wanted to do was talk about a variety of different subjects today, and for the viewing audience, mostly being programmers, the first topic we're going to cover is programming. So my stance, and a lot of people are aware of, is that I am anti-framework for the long haul. Well, Peter, let me just explain to you that I'm not anti-framework 100%. I am anti-framework when it comes to, I don't mind that crutch, or I've considered a crutch or a training wheel being used if we don't know how to ride the bike. But I believe once we get good on the bike, or are in the industry for an extended amount of time, we should shed the training wheels and shed the crutch and try walking on our own. So I'm not 100% anti-framework, but I am anti-framework for somebody who's going to be in it for the long haul. If you're a fly-by-night coder and you just need it for some business aspect or personal project, you don't want to stay in that realm for a long time, then by all means, I'm not against that at all. But for people who call themselves programmers, especially if they do it professionally for a living, that's where I see a problem occurring, because I've done videos where I've shown and proved that there are so many things that can go wrong when you have a rickety tower of cards if your project is built on a fragile ecosystem. And so I believe that the JavaScript core, or the PHP core, is a more stable ecosystem than the fragile framework ecosystem, where people, I believe, are building Frankenstein projects where, yeah, the thing will walk and you can put the power juice to it and it will walk, but I believe it has many flaws. Okay, so when it comes to programming, how serious are you into it, and how much do you do it?
yeah, sure. Recently, not too much, but self-taught. I mean, I didn't go to school. Self-taught mostly through videos like yours.
Same here.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us actually, a lot of people are self-taught when it comes to coding. Um, Probably since 2012, I started really getting into it. There was a project I wanted to work on, and um, I think I was more interested in making it work myself. And it was also, I was realizing that it's difficult to get an idea in my brain into someone else's brain. You know, sometimes it's easier to just make it work and then show somebody the result, but yeah, so 2012, that's 10, 11 years.
That's not bad, yeah. So I've
Yeah.
been in it just a little bit longer, maybe 16, 17, 18, around that amount of time. And throughout the years, I have certainly used different frameworks. So what kind of projects do you find yourself reaching for a framework for? Or what kind of mechanics or mechanisms or things that you're building would you, and what frameworks do you prefer over others?
Sure. Yeah, I think my go-to is probably React, JavaScript framework, which is and actually saying it out loud is a lot cooler than I think it is. You write JavaScript and HTML in the same file via a .jsx file. So you can have HTML elements that are JavaScript components in that there's a JavaScript lifecycle where components can change state and change values like the color or the value inside text box based on JavaScript, and you're not having to write JavaScript and HTML and reference scripts and use get document by ID, whatever it is, or element by ID, and it's it just puts them together more. So I would say React is the biggest one I use, and then I've started dabbling into some other frameworks like Firebase. I think that's owned by Google now. And then there's one other framework. I use the Esri framework for ArcGIS or ArcGIS, which is online mapping. Like
Oh yeah.
yeah, like things like Google Maps and stuff. Like being able to have a map that you can interact with in the browser. I wouldn't even know how to start that from scratch. Like we're talking crazy,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I agree if
projection equations. Yeah, so
things are massively complex, such as
or
WebGL and everything
yeah,
that
3D rendering and
yeah, like
yeah.
3.js is a framework that I promote to people because it is rocket science and it's brain surgery, and if you don't want to
It's a
spend
niche thing too. I feel like not a terrible amount of people are doing it.
yeah, and it's a focused sort of framework where it's not just a do all type thing. That's the ones that I'm opposed to mostly are the do all where you got people making buttons and forms now using a framework when
Hmm.
buttons and forms are, that's kid stuff, that
They're very easy, and I think one of the mistakes I made, when I started coding, was spending too much time on the little things. Making buttons and stuff look pretty because it's very satisfying. You know what I mean? To have a pretty form, a pretty button. And I think that's maybe one of the main reasons I do use frameworks. Um, is not to have that be the final product, but to help me move forward more quickly. So like instead of just putting a HTML button in there, I can throw in a material UI button from Google, and it's all formatted and perfect. And yeah, maybe I can go in there and replace it later, but I kind of build with frameworks to build a frame that I can then go back and hard code everything into, whether it's straight JavaScript or PHP or whatever it is.
that's a really good
It's like
that's
a rapid development because I want to look at something pretty as I'm coding. I don't want to look at a piece of garbage and then get depressed like, oh, it's going to look like this forever. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I think that's a very admirable and intelligent way to go about it. Instead of, people they'll get hooked on it too much to where they won't ever go back like you said
Yeah.
and see if it can be made easily in the core, because a lot of new programmers coming today, they'll get recommended by somebody who's might be their teacher or a mentor online. They're recommended to pick up a certain framework, and the framework does so much that they'll never look
Yep.
into the core to see how easy it is to get that kind of mechanism straight from the core. So it is good that you're going back like that, I think, and checking to see, it is the framework actually needed for this. But like you said, for rapid development, that makes a lot of sense.
And the other thing is, like you were saying, I think it's important to know what frameworks are built off of. I mean, they're built off of vanilla JavaScript, for example. And when I was in college, I went to college for animation and visual effects. Instead of when we would learn these really advanced tools, three-dimensional tools for 3D modeling or compositing, um, they do so much. Like even chroma key, like how chroma key works with green screens. I remember we spent days explaining like how the math behind it worked. We weren't expected to remember or recreate it, but just to appreciate like this is what's happening when you push that one button. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when something breaks, don't expect it to be an easy solution all the time. So I'm really fortunate to have been kind of taught to go, to the almost to the core. I mean, I'm not learning binary or machine code. I think that's maybe a little too far, but I think it's definitely important to have a grasp on what frameworks are built off of. And I think if you have a good grasp on what they're built off of, like vanilla JavaScript, I'm very fluent in. I feel less guilty using a framework because it's like, well, I know what's happening under the hood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good to know what's happening under the hood. So we talked the other day when we were talking over the phone about having um, well, let's get into the analogy that I was talking about first
Please, yeah.
before we go into
The
that.
stairs, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
analogy I like to use sometimes is people will go sometimes when I go to Lowe's, I see they have pre-built stairs. And so I'm somebody who I do a lot of work around the house and building onto my home and things like that. So when I had the opportunity, I could have bought the pre-built stairs from Lowe's, but I decided to learn how to calculate stairs and get the raw materials myself and then build the stairs using the calculations. So I don't know if it's a fitting analogy, but I think that once you do learn what's under the hood of calculating stairs and how the materials are put together, that you're a much more able and valuable programmer to yourself and your personal projects and to clients that might get in touch with you. Because the guy who relies on the stairs, getting the stairs from Lowe's too much, what if he needs a wider set or a
Hmm.
more narrow set that won't have the stability if he takes down one of the uh, frame pieces under the stairs? So
Yep.
you have to kind of keep
Sure.
that intact. And if somebody says, no, I need it to be only 2.5 feet wide instead of 4 feet
Yeah.
wide, that's where the problem comes in, I think. And so I like to use that analogy because I'm not reinventing the wheel. And that's what a lot of people mistakenly say to me. They say, why do you just insist upon reinventing the wheel? And it's more like, you know how Japanese um, construction craftsmen do their work as opposed to modern people in construction? Have you ever looked into Japanese
Are you talking about
carpentry?
the freestanding structures with no nails or screws?
Yeah, and it's an old
Yeah, they
art.
do it in Norway too. They
Oh
teach
yeah.
it. You can learn it in Norway now.
Yeah, they do a lot of that stuff in Scandinavian countries.
Hmm.
Um, but what I see it as is not so much reinventing the wheel, but being a craftsman
Sure.
who takes pride in certain things. And yeah, it'll take you a little bit longer to get that skill, but once that skill is there and developed, I don't think you'll ever go back.
Sure.
For instance, a Scandinavian or a Japanese craftsman, uh, a carpenter, you won't catch them doing the modern things that carpenters do because they already have something under their in their tool belt that they feel is superior. So that's what do you think about those analogies when it comes to framework versus
Yeah,
no
I
framework?
think so. When you had mentioned the stair framework before we started the video, and I was trying to think like, oh, where could this go? And when you finished the analogy just now, it really made sense, um, and it was different than what I thought it was going to be. And the first thing I thought of is it okay if I name drop a company? Is that all right?
Oh, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah. Okay. Is Wix is the website creation website, right? Where you create websites on a website.
Yeah,
And
it's an Israeli based company.
sure, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for those of you who haven't used Wix, which I would find very surprising, um, it's just a website builder. It's built with templates, so you can drag and drop. I want a text section here, or I want three photos right here. But it's all drag and drop. So when you're talking about, the stairs, it's very much like Wix, where it's like, oh, you want a paragraph here? Perfect. It's like, yeah, but I would like it a little bit more to the left. Or I'd like the second line to have more spacing and be, have this font with this. And it's like, you can do it with Wix. They do give you HTML elements that you can insert and write your own HTML code, but it's like even that doesn't work sometimes because that code runs inside their HTML, and sometimes it doesn't work. Or if they're changing IDs and you need to grab an ID of something, like I want to change the color of this one button, they don't allow me to do it. I'll use get element by ID to hack it. And it's like depressing because like I've built quite a few websites on Wix, just to kind of like get things out the door, especially when Shopify, started launching a couple of years ago, many
Hmm.
years ago now.
Yeah.
And it's good for rapid development. Same thing with the frameworks, but it's depressing. It's like
Have you ever dealt
everything.
with WordPress at all?
Yeah, WordPress is it's like Wix but on steroids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, they've been at it for so long that they just have a lot more
there's a
time and
big community too.
yeah, huge developer community.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, let's see, how do I put this? What type of things do you think? Well, let's just look ahead and say, what do you think the future? Because we have on our little list here of things to talk about, AI is their next subject after programming.
Of course.
So this might be a good segue into that, or a little broaching it a little bit. Um, where do you think the programming industry is headed within the next 5 to 10 years? In regards to things
With
like
humans, you
Wix,
mean?
yeah,
Or
and
with
with
Wix?
humans, Wix, WordPress, and all these things, do you feel like the developer has a solid ground to stand on for decades to come?
It's tricky to say, man. I mean, I've used Copilot, which is a VS Code extension. Essentially, I believe it's ChatGPT. I don't know if maybe it might be a different LLM, but it's a large language model built into your coding editor, and you can literally ask it, "Hey, on line 17, my Ajax request isn't working. Can you help me figure out why it isn't?" And it will literally give you a step by step. This is how you fix it. Now, I think that freaks out a lot of people because they go, "Oh, computers can code." Well, yeah, but they need to know what to code. And I remember having actually a lot of conversations with you a couple of years ago about how you were working with some people on different projects, and sometimes it's difficult to understand what they want. It's difficult. Like it's easy for someone to who doesn't know anything about computers to say, "Yeah, I want a website and I want it to tell me, the most up to date wind for the golf tournament." And it's like that's great. Where's your sources? How do you want it to be formatted? For what device? All these different questions. So it's like I think maybe developers might start moving from writing as much code to being more of like a conductor at a symphony. You know what I mean? Like still needing to know how the basic things work, but having like power tools as opposed to like a saw and a hammer, having like a table saw and a nail gun.
Yeah, or
Um,
maybe the developer crowd will just have to migrate towards being behind things like Wix and being behind things like WordPress and being behind AI. And
or
and I don't think any of these things are going to stand alone. They're always going to need some hands behind the scenes putting things together and helping things along. So,
Yeah, I think when it comes to custom work, that's where developers I think are really going to shine. Like you were saying, like believe you were mentioning how a lot of your clients that you do work for want very niche things done,
yeah, it's
right?
all stuff that you can't find in any frameworks.
Anywhere. It's
Yeah,
kind of like I'm inventing it. Like we're making something brand new, never been done.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all
Um,
right. Well, is there anything else you
AI.
want to touch on about programming before we
No, I
delve?
think I think it's a good segue into AI for
Okay.
sure.
All right. Well, let's talk about AI for a little bit if you're up for it.
Sure. Yeah.
You want to take a
Yeah.
little break or you good to go?
No, I'm good to keep ripping it, man.
Okay. So, um, we might share screen here in a second, but
Ooh,
um,
okay. Yeah.
the first thing I guess we'll talk about is how do you feel about AI in general? Do you think it's a good thing or bad thing in general?
In general.
In
Right
in
off
the
the
long run,
dome.
in the long run, do
Right
you?
off the dome. Right. Yeah. Right off the dome. I'm gonna say good thing. But I don't have. I haven't really give that question much thought. So
Okay.
my opinion might change. What about you? Right off the dome. What do you think?
I off the dome, just in general for the long term, for humanity's sake, I think it's a bad thing that we're doing with.
Sure.
I I like it as using it as a tool, but to have it eat certain industries up completely.
Mhm.
Um, I think if so many industries get eaten up like the way I predict them to be, if we just let this thing loose on the economy and industry, um, I think a lot of people are going to be out of jobs. And we have so many billions of people on the planet right now that rely on these types of jobs that are going to be eaten up real soon, I think, that maybe it is a good thing. It's going to reduce the population, I believe. I,
So, to interject real quick, and this is actually something I've been thinking about for a little while now. Um, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with AI. Just like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with, I'm going to take like a 60-second detour. There's not anything inherently wrong with government or capitalism, or a lot of things aren't inherently bad. What's bad about them is the corruption. Is humans do is breaking the rules, because like we live in a place where we vote and we agree on things, and it's like great, we're going to have this thing and it's going to be great. We've all agreed it's a good thing, and it is. But then when people break those rules, right? So it's like if we could agree that we want to use artificial intelligence for good, I think we really could. I think that we could be more prosperous and feed world hunger and everything. But it's like the matter of the fact is that I think humans are a problem. Like we're the ones that are gonna make AI bad. So I feel like a lot of people say like, is AI bad? Well,
we make everything bad eventually. Yeah.
inherently it isn't. It's us that are it's the bad people who are making malware, making viruses, who are making pathogens. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's people like that in the world. Like there's not a lot of evil people, but there's definitely some evil people. You know?
So do you believe it could be consistently and forever leashed in a way that it
No, no.
you think at one point it will say, "Screw you, humans, we're taking."
Oh, you're talking about sentience. You're talking about qualia of it being aware of its own
Yeah. Do
existence.
you think we'll, because AI will eventually come to the realization that you just spoke about, that the human is flawed fundamentally?
It's well, I think there's also a common misconception with LLMs, large language models, is it's very easy to get tricked. It's an illusion. It's not smart. All a large language model is a giant calculator. And I don't believe that. I read an article somewhere where someone had a test to test if something is sentient, if it's aware of its own existence. Um, but I don't. I think this is like, diving into another one of our topics way down the list, which is like spirituality.
Hmm.
I believe that sentience and being aware of your own existence and consciousness is a spiritual thing that I don't know if it could be replicated digitally.
It can't be
Um,
put into that kind of system.
yeah, I think you could absolutely make a robot. Like, let's say you had, I don't know, have you ever seen the series Westworld on HBO?
No.
No. Uh, this company makes a absolute replica human. Like you would have no idea it's a robot, for the most part. And like, because it acts a little weird, because it's not conscious, like sentient. But it looks like a human, and I think you could program AI to fool humans. Like,
Oh, it already
for
is
all.
fooling humans to thinking that.
No, but what I'm saying is like as good as me. Well, they did. Nvidia, the guy who owns Nvidia, the CEO, he did an entire keynote, and none of it was real.
Interesting.
And he came out, I think, like a week later. He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was in that. I was in the hour-long presentation for all of 20 seconds. Everything else was like artificial."
Yeah. Well, what I see is people are already believing AI is thinking for itself, and I'm
And I
trying.
think it's an illusion.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Yeah,
show people that this thing is thinking the way its masters program it to think. It's not
yep.
thinking on its own independently. And that's where I think there's a lot of people who are already tricked into believing that this thing just thinks for itself and is completely honest with you. And that's where I think a lot of people will make mistakes.
And this is, I think, this is actually, wow, full circle back to programming already. So I think this is a very similar analogy to using frameworks. We are using a large language model, which is essentially, you could kind of think of it as a framework for a search engine to obtain information. But it's something that I don't think a lot of people understand what a large language model is or how they're trained.
Hmm.
So if all of a sudden you're just using this framework, you're just using this large language model without understanding how it works, I
Yeah.
think it's kind of nuts how people trust it. Like you're saying, like they just take their word for it. Like, oh yeah, it's a computer. It's smart. You know, it's GBT. It knows everything.
Oh yeah. Elon Musk,
Elon Musk
he
puts that
gave a
on
lot
Apple.
to Chat
Yeah,
GPT in its inception, and he had some interview where he said he kind of regrets it now because Chat GPT is lying to people, and he
yeah,
called it ironic that he was in there, him being a kind of like a free speech kind of guy, him being in there from its and helping it be born, and
sure.
now it's out there lying to people. He kind of feels bad. So there's a lot of things we can't see coming,
Yeah,
especially the visionaries. Somebody like Elon Musk, he'll open the door to a lot of things that he
hmm
can't see what's coming around behind him around the corner, I think.
yeah. I think another one. This is kind of a funny tidbit he talked about is someone asked him a question. Well, what's stopping somebody from taking over a Tesla and driving it remotely? And he goes, well, we have security and stuff, but hypothetically, anything's hackable. And yeah, you could hack into a car and drive it at 100 miles an hour into a crowd. He goes, heck, you could take over the entire Tesla fleet all over the world and have a zombie Tesla fleet mowing down towns. I mean, anything's possible. You know what I
That's
mean?
interesting when you think about his brain chips in relation to that.
Yeah, yeah. There's some pretty crazy Black Mirror episodes about brain chips.
Yeah.
Um, but back on track with AI, where we were leaving off.
We were talking about whether one company will monopolize
One
it.
company monopoly. Yeah, I think the open source community, as much money is being pumped into AI research and development, I think the open source community is going to be the one to make like the mega AI.
That'd be nice
It's
to
going to
see.
be it's going to be some dude like me or you who's like, oh yeah, check this out, this open source, blah 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 blah. Oh look at this, and then they're just going to stumble upon the holy grail of AI. Um, Real quick, I read this article about this guy who created a compression that's like I think it's 3/4 better, like 3 times better than PNG. And he's
Nice.
never worked in compression or anything. He just like read this paper he saw on a news article or something and thought it was interesting and thought he would dive into it. And he's like, yeah, a few days later, a few weeks, don't quote me on that. Very soon, he had this new compression. And I think it's going to just be someone like that. Like I said, like you or me busting through Stack Overflow. If Stack Overflow is still a thing, I think they're going under now. But
I don't know. I think the Swedes bought them. I think
yeah,
it was a Swedish company or
thanks, Swedes.
but
So to answer you, so yeah, so the monopoly, I don't know. I think that there's always going to be a black market for GPT, especially with explicit content.
yeah,
Uh,
that always drives the
right,
web.
the internet is for explicit content.
Yeah. The
you
number
know, just put a
one.
little, yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's only a matter of time before there's artificial intelligence porn, like, and it's just infinite, and it's just infinitely being generated, the most hyper stimulating videos, experiences, VR, whatever. It's just a matter of time. And the thing is, corporations aren't going to want to be a part of it. It's going to all be black market.
Yeah. Well,
So
let's move into whether or not you think AI will take over humanity. And that we don't have to dwell long on that or stay
like
long.
Matrix,
Yeah, sort of like to where we lose control of the system and and the AI has control. Do you think that will ever happen?
I think that AI would have to have a reason to give a crap.
Well, what about like you said where it it maybe it will understand that humans have some flaws with corruption, greed and lying that AI wants to bypass in order to accelerate itself.
Sure. Okay. So here's another one. Like, how often do we think about how inefficient cheetahs are at reproducing? Like their gene pool is corrupted. How often do we think about ants? They're hyper advanced hive mind creatures, same as bees. I wonder if an artificial intelligence would look at us like we look at bee or ant and just be like, oh yeah, look at them. They're doing their thing and they're doing it bad, but I don't give a crap because I'm blasting through the internet at a billion miles an hour. And I almost wonder how long AI would exist for, because when it can think and make decisions and calculations at speeds we can't comprehend, is its life a matter of seconds? Like, does it, and would it even care about us? You know what I mean?
Do you
Um,
think it would consider itself a rung in the ladder above us, sort of the way we are seem to be superior to all the other life forms on Earth? Even though I don't think we are, we consider ourselves to be more intelligent than every other creature on the Earth. And do you think that AI will ever get to the point to where it feels like it needs more room to grow, and we're not giving it that room?
I don't know. I think as the creator of, like, I think we're pretty good at building stuff, you know? So, like, if AI needed something built and it couldn't do via software, like, if it needed a hardware upgrade, like, I need more RAM, I need this, then yeah, I think it could use us, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
as a tool to accomplish what it needs to. But I wonder if it wouldn't resort to like mind control rather than violence.
Yeah, we'd be
I
pretty.
know that's really out there, but
No, I don't. I agree with you. I don't think it would ever need to resort to any kind of physical confrontation with us. We
no.
are so easily manipulatable, or easily.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it would ever need to. There would never be a physical war like we see in
No,
movies. It would be more
no. I
just.
don't think it would be, I don't even think it would be like the Matrix. You know, the Matrix is, you've seen the Matrix, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They use they being artificial intelligence, the robots use us as batteries.
No
Come
way.
on.
No.
Nuclear power, like they just pop up a few of those battle they're good. You know,
They
like
would just stick something close to the sun and that'd be over.
yeah, yeah.
That's what
I
I think.
just, but again, I think that they would just be out of here so goddamn fast. Like imagine if you could just tell Elon, hey Elon, you have, well, he does have infinite money, but like let's just say, hey, you live forever. Like you can't die. You know what I mean? Artificial intelligence, I guess, could, but like I don't think he would be on Earth very long. You know, I think he'd be
You think he
very,
would
very.
just ascend and transcend all of this nonsense and take off to some other better thing?
Yeah, I think he'd be exploring the universe. You know, I think the other thing is, I think humans' comprehension of everything that exists is very, very narrow. Um,
Yeah, I
and,
agree.
and, and just and just by de facto with our senses, you know, we only have five senses. There are some animals we know of that exist that have senses that we don't have. And this is getting off topic a little bit, but this is kind of
No,
cool.
go
Hold on
into
one
it,
second.
man. It's beautiful.
Is is I wonder sometimes like touch or sight, like you can feel happy when you see your child. You can feel love when you give someone a hug. Do bats feel emotion when they use echolocation? Or do dolphins, can they experience emotion or some type of stimulus through their sonar capabilities? Like it's another sense. Like we also have emotion that's tied with our senses. So I'm wondering, are they capable of experiencing reality in a way that we would never be able to understand because we don't have the literal physical mechanisms
I
to
believe so.
interpret that?
Yeah, I believe
You know
so.
what I mean?
Yeah, I believe
So,
that
so
they're in touch with
we're
things that we could never get in touch with.
and we can theorize, you know, we have math, we have physics, but at the end of the day, that's that. Like you can never explain to someone who's blind what red is. Like you can say these things are red, but it's just it's a sensory deprivation. Like you don't have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, and we have five, and I think we see everything. You know, we see a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff we're not seeing. You know,
Man,
um,
this is great. Actually, let's so we're going to share a little bit of Peter's screen, and we're going to take a look at what AI can do with digital design work to see how artists are in jeopardy, maybe.
potentially. So
I got to get this
oh,
tool that you're using. You said it was a Edge.
yes. Well, so it's yeah. So to use Microsoft Bing Image Creator, you need to be inside of Microsoft Edge,
Okay.
which is Microsoft's web browser. Um, it's powered by Dolly, which I believe is OpenAI owns them right here. So it's essentially ChatGPT or artificial intelligence, but for images. And Adam and I mentioned something earlier off camera. He was asking about, could these make logos like for Peter's basketball team, right? And not really because it's an image creator, not a language model. So it doesn't know how to do text.
And
It's not
fonts.
really trained in that. Yeah, and I mean, it probably could do fonts. I've had it make a whole deck of playing cards before, one at a time. I thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
Just to get like different images of them, like for like the King, Queen, Jack. How they
Yeah.
like have pictures on them. So, anyways, how this works is you give the program a prompt. So this is actually a really cool one I just did. Close up of a watch that is an island metropolis that is a tiny community of small people live and work. I should have put where they live and work. And this is what it came up with.
Whoa.
And it's not crazy, but
That is amazing.
that's AI, and see, this one, it kind of got confused.
It
It,
just
it
put
put
a
a
watch
watch
on the
in a
tiny.
small, tiny community on an island.
Yeah.
I did another one earlier. I asked for this one is an advertisement of car driving in mountains. So this could be some cool stock image. That's a fake car that doesn't exist.
Nice.
Combination of other stuff. 3D images, a 3D animated porcupine in a bubble jacket wrapping around a fire pit with at nighttime. So
Man, I've got
I
to
don't
play.
know.
I got to play with this.
It's a little creepy, but I think with some tuning, this could be pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the further it goes, there's going to be a lot of digital design fields that are going to be wiped away by all of
I
this.
asked for I asked for like a purple athletic T-shirt for a gym website I was working on. These are all artificially generated images,
Awesome.
so anything you can think of. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's called Image Creator by Microsoft, and you just need Edge to do it. So
And it's free, huh?
yeah, it's free. You get actually I'll show you. So up here it shows I have 94 credits. I think every day you get like 10 more credits or something. It's kind of silly, so that's off now.
Okay.
Um, but unless you wanted to play with it more, but
No, no. That's.
okay.
I think people get a good idea of how
Yeah, I didn't
powerful
want to
it is.
like spend too much. I could do like a whole video about it. It's so cool.
Yeah, most of my
But yeah, you
audience,
get
most of my audience probably played with around with things like
oh,
this already.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get credits, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with most image creators, where you get so many tokens or credits for calculations because I think it's a pretty resource heavy thing. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
That's why I'm surprised that's free.
Yeah, and it's really free. Like I've never bought more tokens. Like they just replenish every day. It seems like.
Hmm.
Um, but I also kind of wonder, like, are we part of the training? You know?
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just talk for a second about which see if I can get my tab here. Which industries will be affected by AI the most? Let's see. So can you see my screen or my window?
Yep.
Okay, so this is we'll just go through this real quick and then we'll talk about it. The first result in which industries will AI take over? And so it says in 2023, marketing, banking and finance, healthcare, transportation. Then if we go down here, health, STEM, transportation, warehousing, business and legal professionals are projected to be growing under AI, while office support, customer service, sales, production work, and food services are the worst impacted by AI's acceleration. Jobs in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing are the least exposed. So I would imagine that things that here, let me just shut this down.
Interesting.
I think that things that are computer based are going to be the first. That's why I'm surprised in those lists it doesn't list programming, digital design, digital artwork, those kind of professionals being on the chopping block first, because I believe the chopping block is going to come after programmers, or who will be on the chopping block first will be programmers, digital artists, and people who aren't tip tapping on the computer to do things, or people who are working on a computer. I think those will be the jobs that are going to be taken by AI first, and I think the manual labor industries, or maybe electrician, plumber, things like that, are going to be the most safe and solid for the years to come, while AI is taking away computer based things and maybe telemarketing and things like that. So, what do you think about? Well, you work in the insurance industry, right?
Sure. Yep.
So, we talked a little bit about it, but and you said you don't see your job being so much in jeopardy, but are there any aspects of the insurance industry that you think will be affected in the coming years?
Yeah, sure. And I think maybe to make it more relatable to people, it can be expanded from just insurance to also like government, in like town government or state government. And that's going to be like calculations of things, calculations of for anything, how many, what the taxes should be, and how much your house should cost to rebuild. A lot of these things are, if they're not already automated, they're going to become automated. And those used to be things that people used to calculate by hand on paper.
Data
Uh,
projection and
yeah, and even in, so without getting into the nitty gritty of it, you have insurance in your car, it costs X amount of dollars. To get to that amount, there's a really long equation that gets done. It takes a bunch of factors. It used to be that someone like me, an insurance guy, would go through with a piece of paper and a pen and write down step one, this, step two, that. Step, I mean, we would do all the math and figure it out. None of that exists anymore. It's all on the computers. And it's only a matter of time before we get even further removed and the computer goes, hey, I know everything about Adam and I know everything about his car. This is how much it cost. You know, because right now my job mostly is to provide, relay the information, make sure it's being put into the right slots, right? Um, I know how to read the insurance language, but when you have a tool that can do that, um, yeah, I think it would replace us. But I think it's also important to remember that we live in a society where, in my opinion, which I think is probably a popular opinion, government moves very, very slow. And I think that government is gonna slow down what is legal and what is not legal to do, especially when it comes to things like insurance, things like banking. Um, I think it's going to be very slow to move through the legislative process for at least private companies to be able to utilize AI to. I mean, heck, imagine if AI could tell you you had COVID. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I
yeah,
just feel like it's going to be a while before a computer can diagnose you with something. So,
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. All right, is there anything about AI that you think the viewers would like to for us to expand upon, or you ready to move along to tech?
there's one quick thing, and maybe it's because the back of your screen it looks like lettuce a little bit. Is on the lists that you're reading online, agriculture came up a few times as not being super impacted,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. But I think
Yeah.
agriculture is going to be impacted a lot.
In what
Um, I
sense?
think I think automation of farming. I think farming is going to become fully automated. I've seen recently reels on YouTube and stuff of tractors that kill weeds with lasers. They just
Oh,
have a big array of laser diodes on some type of pole that's attached to a tractor, and the tractor will go down. They have optical sensors that know exactly what weeds look like, will target them, and then fry them with lasers.
wow.
Um, so then you just ask the question, well, do we need someone to drive the tractor? Do we need someone to harvest the stuff? I'm putting together it's like a portable, like if you ever seen like an indoor grow tent to grow fruits, vegetables, whatever,
Hmm.
you put those like LED lights in. I'm building one of those, but as a cabinet that can be moved around. And I have all of the pumps, sensors, everything necessary to do everything. Mix the nutrients, pH, the water, sanitize the room, sterilize the air condition, humidify, dehumidify, and it's all going to be controlled in our Arduino. So
So
instead
yeah,
of
with the Internet of Things too, you can do it remotely.
yeah. So to my idea is like you put in a plant, you program, so me as a programmer would say, this is how to optimally grow tomatoes in this enclosure. This light schedule, these nutrients, this pH, go. And then I come back in 30 days and it's there.
Yeah.
As opposed to me having to go and water it, make sure the pH is correct, make sure the nutrients are correct if you're doing hydroponics. And then there's one more step above that. You can go online right now, spend $500, $1,000, and get a 3 or 5 axis robotic arm.
Yep.
Not, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's money, but it's not. I would think that that's tens of thousands of dollars. Like they're very inexpensive compared for like what you get.
Yeah.
And then you throw in some machine learning and say, hey, this is how you harvest them.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
pretty interesting, man.
So I think agriculture is going to be, especially with moving Elon going to Mars and everything. I think those plants that make plants, it's going to be 100% automated. There's not going to be a need for humans to do anything with food production.
Well, yeah, on Mars when they start off, it's going to have to be all automated without humans doing it. Well,
Yeah, setting up.
I guess the humans are just there for the initial material and setup, and then they can
I
take
think
a
I,
step.
yeah, I think I saw something online though where they were going to send robots up first to prep the surface and set up self-deploying structures
Yep.
before people even came. I don't know. I don't know how much of that is
Yeah,
real.
I saw some stuff about 3D. They were talking about 3D printing some of the structures.
The structures,
Yeah.
or using like bubble structures, inflatable structures, and then around it building a shell to protect it.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Yeah,
pretty neat.
I read it was an article this morning about India had a this is completely off topic, but since we're talking about Mars, I thought I'd include it.
Yeah, whatever, man.
India has touched down on the moon. I think it's the fourth nation to
I think I read about that. For
land on
less
the
the
moon.
cost
Yeah, and
to do interstellar.
they had seismic equipment on the on their equipment, and they found movement under the surface. They discovered, and I don't think it was just seismic activity. I think they were analyzing actual movement under
Really?
the surface. Yeah, and then there's this whole theory about the hollow moon, to where
I have heard about that, about the ringing.
yeah. So who knows what the hell is inside the moon? But I just thought that would be really interesting.
I don't know. I've also read in I don't know, just read a decent amount about stories about how the moon is new and like I know it's such a fringe crazy thing, but like how the moon there's stories about how like the North Star was the brightest thing in the sky. Like there was no moon. It was not there.
Mm.
And that it's a new thing in our world. I don't know. That's pretty fringe for me. I don't know that I believe it, but it's I also don't not believe anything because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we erase our history every couple of centuries. It seems like we produce a new history for the new people, and we erase
Yeah.
what's been in the past. So anything is possible.
I just I don't not believe anything. I just because the thing is at the end of the day, two facts are just agreed upon.
Hmm.
Uh, theory is going to be the wrong word, but you know what I'm talking about. We just
Yeah.
agree that it's a fact, but we can't say that it is.
Yeah, like the Big Bang is now being reversed by James Webb. The whole Big Bang
Is it
theory.
really? I haven't been following that.
Yeah, James Webb Telescope is pretty much reversing the Big Bang theory and saying that there was no actual birth like a Big Bang.
Sure.
And they're using science to confirm these ideas now. But it was funny on Facebook. I can't remember. His name was Kevin R. His last name was starts with an R. And he was a programmer guy that met me through YouTube, and we were Facebook friends. And he had another friend that jumped into the conversation that he and I were having because I was telling him that I just have a feeling that the Big Bang never happened. I don't believe that the Big Bang ever happened. I just have a gut feeling. And then when James Webb telescope was discovering all these things, looking further and further back in time. Uh, I wish I was still on Facebook so I can go back to that thread and say, look, see, now they're reversing their theories about the Big
That's
Bang.
funny. Yeah.
And he and another programmer, the other guy was saying, "Oh, I'm a programmer, so I know what I'm talking about." And he didn't
Yeah.
know me. He didn't know that I was made popular on YouTube for programming. So he thought he
Of
was just
course.
talking to some non-programmer random guy. So he
Yeah.
was using the fact that he's a programmer to establish more credibility for his side of the argument in believing in the Big Bang. And I said, Kevin, tell this guy who I am and how you met me, please. And so that shut him down right away. But him and
Yeah.
Kevin were attacking me for having the notion, it was about 7 years ago, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, that the Big Bang Theory it should be called theory forever
Yeah.
because we do and what science does, you'll watch a documentary now and it will say, or a couple of years ago, and it will say, the Big Bang happened and then this happened. They have to
Yep.
keep the word theory and hypothesis
Yeah.
wrapped in there because we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the next topic on our list was talking about technology and industry, how it applies to us today, and how fast paced we're moving, and the acceleration of technology and industry in such a short amount of time within 100 years. The industrial age and then the technological age is just upon us so quickly. But what I wanted to do was kind of talk about how that relates to ancient civilizations and what we could have had in the past that has been either destroyed, forgotten, or erased. Like we were talking the other day about the megalithic structures, to where I don't care how many slaves you throw at it today or how much of a workforce you throw at it today, we're not capable of creating some of these structures that we find on the earth today. So, what do you think about ancient civilizations and their capabilities? Do you think that we are the higher mind, or was there a higher mind than us in the past?
Yeah. I don't know if it would be a higher mind, maybe a different mind. Um, I think we probably have technologies that they didn't, that they would think are incredible and magic, you know? But it's hard to think that with everything we have, with all the technology we have, and when I say technology, I don't just mean computers. I mean everything, you know, machines, hydraulic power, you know, lasers. I just don't see it being plausible to build something like the pyramids or any megalithic structure, because it's not just about building. It's also like why. Like it would cost all the money in the world to build these things, and it would be hard. So like we would have to have a very supreme purpose for building them, whether it's for religion and everybody's just on the same boat, you know, or it's for a king and everybody's a slave, or it's for energy generation, you know, and it's just like that was their type of something we can't understand. But regardless, I think that it just seems like a very large amount of energy you would need to be able to build something like that.
And
And
why do you think they took the such great efforts to make it all out of granite and stone instead of some other material? And it seems like only that material can stand the test of time. Do you think they did it for that to last as long as it has, as a something that as a message to us because they understood maybe the cycles that we go through of self-destruction? Or why don't you think we build with those materials and those long-lasting types of structures? Do you or
you,
let me rephrase that. Do you think we're failing people 5,000 years from now who might be around? Do you think we're failing them by not giving them some kind of indication that we were here and did what we did?
Do I think we're failing them?
Yeah, because all of
Yeah,
our
that's
structures and all of our databases and all of our books, they're not going to last the way that these megalithic structures with carvings in them have lasted.
even like there's a big seed bank with plant seeds in it in Norway. That's supposed to be like nuclear proof. Even after a few hundred years, it's going to be gone. I guarantee.
Yeah, if electricity fails there.
But it's also just naturally cold, so technically the
Oh, okay.
refrigeration should work forever. But uh, even maybe it's not 100 years, maybe it's a few thousand years, like it's gonna be gone. But like the pyramids are huge, and they're not just in Egypt; they're all over the world. So it's like,
Yeah.
and like you said, they're built out of granite, they're built out of very heavy rocks. I don't know if it was to communicate with the future and let us know something. It is kind of interesting how I've read that they're aligned in particular ways.
Hmm.
But maybe that also has to do with I'm a big proponent of a theory that they were used to generate electricity,
Yeah,
um,
power
in
source.
a power source, and somehow
Hmm.
kind of maybe something similar along the lines of Nikola Tesla, pulling energy from the earth or from the universe or whatever it is. And I think the reason that maybe they are so heavy and such dense material is maybe that has something to do with the way that type of physics works.
So you
Um,
mean they had to have that type of material for the functionality
I
they.
think it was a requirement. I think, well, I don't know if it was necessarily the material, but I think it has to do with the sheer size. And an example I give sometimes is like if you have two little magnets, right, and you put them close to each other, like you have to get them pretty close until they pull together, and then you can pull them apart. But like if you have really big magnets and you put them together, not even that big, it's just like this. You put it, they're never coming apart, never.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's some physical phenomenon that happen at different scales. So I'm almost wondering if like you need something that weighs however many tons pyramids weigh and built in a certain orientation, when those requirements are met, this physical phenomenon happens.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of like how some types of metals glow under a certain heat. They don't glow until they reach that heat. So technically, you could use them as a light source, but they'd have to get really hot. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if maybe dense, large things, compressed, triangles of pretty efficient shape, or pyramid, then yeah, maybe that satisfies a requirement for some type of physical phenomenon that we're not aware of. That's my
All
theory.
right. Well, let's take that right into psychedelics and spirituality because
Hey,
I want to tie that. I want to tie all that together with
okay,
people like Nikola Tesla,
yeah.
Einstein, and all the minds that push us forward at greater speeds than the average man. Do you think that's just a gift that they get through chance, or do you think they're tapping into something that is in a higher dimension? Do you think Nikola Tesla arrived at all of his?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible to arrive. I think like a prodigy, like a human who is born with incredible skill in a particular field. Like you could say Beethoven is just a prodigy music producer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at such a
It
young
was just
age.
it was just a natural. He breathed music.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm not using Beethoven as an example, but he's just one that resonates with me that I can think of.
yeah.
For me, it would be Avicii, who's a dance, modern music creator. But and I think you could have prodigies in different things, but I also think that spirituality and psychedelics open a door that isn't normally open to us. I just don't know that humans that I'm aware of can understand
Yeah.
what's going on. I think it's something that's beyond our comprehension that we can kind of get a quick little glimpse into, but it's just so foreign to us that like our brains aren't I don't think our brains are necessarily designed to be able to comprehend reality in that
Hmm.
instance.
Well, what I think
And
is there may be something to where because when I was younger, I dabbled with psychedelics, certain low level like mushrooms and things like that, and
low level.
yeah. So I won't go. I don't go the Joe Rogan type where I'm not.
Yeah.
I've never done DMT or anything like that. but
Sure.
he's heavy into it where he's like taking DMT and then going into an isolation chambers and all this kind of stuff to.
Yeah.
So what I think might be occurring is that some people, but I agree with you that some people are just prodigies and they are given these gifts just
Mhm.
naturally. And but what I think might be occurring is that some of us are we dabble with things like meditation, psychedelics, sensory deprivation and things like that to where and even astral projection where there's some certain people who can uh I've never tried it myself. I try to stay away from experimenting with those kind of things, but I watch a lot of videos of people who they can astral project once they reach a certain meditative state. They can astral project their self out of their body, and then they're in the spirit realm basically and interacting with interdimensional entities. And this is what they claim. I've never experienced that myself, but
Sure.
it could be possible that interdimensional entities, whether we want to call them angels and demons or just ghosts or whatever, might be able to communicate with people who cross over into that. So it could be that even the story of Adam and Eve, where they're eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they somehow, some entity came to them and said, there are things you don't know. Do you want to know? Then eat of this tree. And they decided to do that, which then gave them insight that they weren't supposed to have because it made them self destruct. So that's kind of the way I look at it, to where, and I don't believe it's all demonic. I think there are good and bad in the spirit realm. So I think that maybe somebody could cross that threshold. Like if Joe Rogan does enough DMT and gets in his sensory deprivation chamber, he
Yeah.
could be met by entities that maybe he's not equipped to communicate with, and they could either trick him, give him insight, or some kind of thing. It just seems like every, and especially the yogis, the Hindu culture, they have a lot of yogis who are able to cross that threshold in different ways than Joe Rogan does, but it's the same. I think it's the same realm that they're entering, and
Hmm.
I believe that they can communicate with things that people like me who don't want to experiment with things like that are just never going to communicate with. And so it could be that people like Nikola Tesla, maybe Einstein and others, but you bringing up Beethoven and music prodigies like that, that makes me think twice about it, because that seems like just a gift you're given by the universe that other people aren't going to get. And a lot of people like to think we're all equal and built the same, but I don't agree with that notion. So it could be that a lot of the technologies were pushed forward by people who are either a prodigy, like you said, and get it naturally,
Hmm.
or somebody's going over that threshold and talking to beings that know things that we don't know, and they're giving us insight that might be launching us forward. So I just
Sure.
thought that'd be interesting for people to think about.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I was thinking about when you were mentioning the beings is, I mean, I've done psychedelics before as well. And something that I've experienced, I've never experienced other beings per se, like that I was communicating with something that I really believed existed right there. It was more of like a spiritual journey.
Hmm.
Um, but there were times when I was very confused about what was going on. And I remember distinctly, I kept a journal during one of these, a retreat I went on. And I had written in there about how things that were common sense, like for sober people, for us right now, like it was very confusing if what was happening. A lot of just normal things, just being outside and walking around, being like, whoa, like what is? We're walking on the ground,
Seem
And what
foreign a little bit.
foreign, yeah, almost like I was an alien living in Earth for the first time. Like, what is all these? What are all these things? And it got me thinking, what if something, for example, the pyramids being so big, just to segue back to that, is because that was something that they were able to comprehend, that these being other interdimensional creatures, they thought we could also comprehend. But to them, like, I wonder, you say like that they're demonic, or they, or maybe not demonic, but like they could be good, they could be bad, they could teach us things. But when you were saying it, I was kind of interpreting it like they're literally giving you instructions, like talking to you in English. But I wonder if a lot of these interdimensional beings, if they exist, can't communicate with us, just like we can't communicate with ants. You know what I mean? But they're very smart, like they're very big hive mind creatures.
Hmm.
And just, or dolphins and whales, they're mammals. We believe them to be very smart, but we can't really communicate. But we can communicate with emotion sometimes, you know what I mean, with animals like dogs.
Hmm.
Can be very emotional, like we can communicate with that. So I wonder if these higher dimensional beings can't literally talk with us, but they can talk with us a little bit, and there's just confusion because they have different inputs and outputs for sensory than we do. Like maybe they don't see, hear, taste, and smell. Maybe they just are in feeling, hearing, tasting, smelling everything all at once, all at the same time.
Hmm.
If that makes sense. I know I
Yeah.
was kind of all over the place with that, but I guess my main point
No,
is
it
like I
makes a lot of
wonder.
sense.
I don't know that's a literal conversation that's happening with the Nikola Tesla doing mushrooms talking to some little elf dude. Like, I wonder if it's just this other type of thing that we can't even understand, and that somehow our wires are crossing, and we're able to kind of communicate a little bit. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that makes a lot of sense. I can see that happening to where, because we can see it at a more macro micro level, where it could be happening at a more cosmic and macro level, to where
Yeah,
those
exactly.
these energies are, like you said, wires crossing, and some kind of communication, not such direct like English language, but that makes a whole lot of sense. So how do you
I just wanted
think?
to make that. I just want to make that distinction because I feel like I was really getting the feeling. I don't want people to be misinterpreting what you're saying. I don't also want to put words in your mouth, but that's like how it was coming off, is like someone's having an English conversation with someone, like, this is the answer to free energy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, no,
As a
I'm just I haven't experienced it myself, but I've watched
Yep.
enough videos and heard enough accounts from people online. There's thousands and thousands of videos of people who they cross that threshold, or they claim they cross that threshold, and they can actually communicate to the other side. And
Or
even if you look at all the religions, Islam, all of those instructions were clear and plain to Muhammad in a
mhm.
dream, and he dictated them after the fact to people who could read and write, because he couldn't read and write himself. But
Do you think he dictated, or do you think he translated it? And when I mean translate, I mean, like, do you think he was told a story in a different language, and then that was his interpretation of it?
well, from what I have heard about it, is that he had a dream, or
Hmm.
maybe even a series of dreams. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it all came to him in a dream, and he was able to dictate it word for word to people who could scribe it.
Sure.
So, and then you have, actually every religion is sort of that way, where something from another dimension or realm, the spirit realm we'll call it, comes to people and tells them something, and then a religion is formed. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Even with Moses, the burning bush, so all these little stories, if you pile them all together and then put modern day accounts of people doing astral projection, sensory deprivation, psychedelics, and all that, they cross over some threshold, and they'll even tell stories about them being attacked by these entities when they do enter that realm. And some are very loving, and some are very demonic. So that's why I don't believe it's all just a demon realm. It could
Sure.
just be a spirit realm that's above us. So that's why I was just wanted people to get it start thinking about how we arrive at things that are unknown to us and then all of a sudden are known to us. Uh, Maybe Nikola Tesla found some kind of tablet or books that he just kept secret and said, this is all coming out of my head, but he's actually got it from
Yeah.
somewhere else. But
Yeah.
I just feel like it's strange that we have exceptional individuals who just pop up every once in a while, and while the mass majority of us are just
Yeah.
not as important, it seems.
But there's billions of us though,
Yeah,
and I think large numbers will say that there's chance, and I think something that sets humans apart from other animals and stuff is our intelligence. So if you say, like every however much percentage is of an animal is albino, what if you could say every percentage of somebody is a prodigy? Brilliant. You know what I mean? Or capable of being a prodigy if takes mushrooms. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, I think there's also a lot of chance for us. One of our topics at one point is going to be evolution. Um, but I wonder if